The corazon. A long time ago, great conquistadors and travelers scoured the Amazon and the Caribbean for what was called El Dorado, the city of gold. But year after year, none of them found even a hint of its location. It turned out that El Dorado never existed, but it was a story that was made up by some native Brazilians to make sure no one ever found the corazon of the forest. The corazon was much more valuable than any amount of gold. The corazon, you see, was the source from which all life sprang and from which all life got its strength. And it would have stayed hidden forever. It was in the most remote forest, the most remote region of the Brazilian rainforest, in land that was rocky and remote. Winds and fog kept people from wanting to live there. But one day a farmer came upon this land and he torched it to make room for his cattle to graze. I'm not blaming the farmer. He was just trying to make a living, trying to get enough money to feed his family. But then he saw the corazon, and let me tell you, it looked just like what a giant heart you would think would look like. He immediately recognized it from the stories he heard as a kid, and used a machete to break it free from where it sat and took it with him into town to sell. As luck would have it, at that same time, an explorer was coming into town, an explorer who had dedicated his life to El Dorado, an explorer who was 60 years old and about to give up. He saw this farmer carrying this huge heart and followed him. The explorer overheard the farmer telling people he had found the corazon, and everyone told him to put it back where he found it. The explorer did not know what this corazon did, but it seemed to be important, and he knew he had to have it. So as the farmer was about to head back to his farm, the explorer finally introduced himself to the farmer. The farmer was a little unsure if he should do business with the explorer, but he was desperate, and he had a big family to feed, and so he went back to the farm, $1,000 richer, and the explorer left with the corazon. The corazon looked rather ordinary, just like a giant heart of a large animal. The explorer overheard that it had some magical powers, and so the explorer decided he would test it. He took one of his diabetes syringes and drew a few drops of blood from the heart. Then he dropped those drops on his tongue and swallowed. They were incredibly bitter, and almost immediately the room started to spin. The explorer thought he might die, but luckily he did not. He passed out, but then he woke up and everything seemed okay. Better than okay, actually. He looked at himself in the mirror and he seemed to have grown from his paltry 166 centimeters to nearly 200, and all of his gray hair was gone too. He could not believe it. This corazon was the real deal, and he rushed to the airport, made a deal with a shady private pilot to help him smuggle the artifact into the US, and then flew to New York. On the way there, his mind raced about all the things he could use this corazon for. He could use it to make infertile fields fertile. He could probably use it to cure cancer. He could use it as a life extender for the wealthy. He called his brother, who he had not seen in a dozen years, and the brother said he would love to meet up. The brother was skeptical, but then just one drop of blood was put on the brother's missing arm, a completely new arm grew, and the brother knew that this corazon was indeed magical. Since the brother was well connected in the world of business, it was not long before he was able to secure meetings with people in biotech companies as well as agriculture and life extension companies to talk about this amazing thing. And it was not long after that that the money began to flow, and he was the most well-known and well-loved man in all of the world. The corazon was slowly shrinking from being used to make so many medicines, and news came from Brazil and news came from Brazil that the rainforest was slowly withering away. But, but the explorer was not worried. By the time the corazon was all used up, he would be long dead, or so he thought. In his 80th year, the explorer began to have night terrors. He would wake up from nightmares covered in sweat, convinced that the forest was talking to him, telling him to put the corazon back or suffer the consequences. The man laughed and had his doctors write him a prescription for some heavy tranquilizers to sleep. This worked for a while, but soon even the strongest tranquilizers could not help him sleep. He told his brother about the nightmares, and the brother laughed, and he said not to worry about it. They were rich and insulated, and besides, they would be dead soon anyway. All the while, the Amazon continued to shrink, and more new stories about flood and famines and droughts and fire spread around the world. The explorer was filled with guilt. He tried to learn to lucid dream so that he could talk to the corazon and ask what it wanted. The corazon said that it would accept sacrifices, but what it really wanted was for the corazon to go back to its home in the forest. The explorer did not want to give up his source of wealth, and so he arranged with all of his great wealth a few poor workers to be sent in secret and sacrificed to appease the corazon. This seemed to appease the corazon for a while, and the explorer's nightmares stopped. But then a few weeks later, the explorer started hearing the corazon talk to him during the day. When the explorer saw the news that the last of the rainforest had dried up, the corazon told him that it was his fault. When the explorer went to the company to try to take the corazon back to Brazil, his brother stopped him and had him committed to a mental hospital. The explorer pleaded with the staff at the mental hospital, but they did not believe his ramblings about the voices, and they just brushed him off. After 3 weeks without sleep, the explorer died. But the corazon was still being abused, used to cure cancer and prolong life and mend broken bones, among other things, and it was still making the brother very, very rich. A week after the explorer was buried, the brother began having nightmares. The corazon told him to take the corazon back to the rainforest or suffer the consequences. The brother laughed. He thought maybe it was the stress of his brother's death that was causing the nightmares, but then the nightmares continued and got even worse. After a week, the brother could no longer sleep. One night, the news came and announced that 100 million people had died in a terrible cyclone in India, one that many figured was caused by global warming, but which the brother knew was caused by the corazon being stolen from the forest. He knew he had to take it back. But it was not easy. It was worth at least $1 billion or maybe more. The brother knew he had to use logic and passion to make his plea. So he announced an emergency meeting. He met with all the heads of his biotech companies and surgeons, and he went over all the evidence and proof that the corazon missing from the forest was the reason for so much climate instability and death. I worry that if we don't take it back, it will mean death for all humans, the brother said. But there was a long silence in the room and then laughter. But we cannot risk taking it back, even if it dooms the world, because it would doom our bottom line. And so it was that the corazon did not go back to the rainforest, and 20 years later the brother died, and 20 years later all forests in the world ceased to be, and 20 years after that all humans ceased to be. The corazon sat shriveled in a biotech lab and convinced birds and horses and all manner of animals to help it get back home. And eventually it did. And eventually it regrew. It took millions of years, but the damage humans had done was not permanent.